Hello and welcome to York Universe, the astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. I'll be one of your hosts this evening, Dr. Elena Hyde, and I'm joined tonight by a very special guest, one you might have heard before on this very show, Professor Robin Metcalf. We're
Hello.
here tonight to tell you all kinds of fun stuff, including eclipses and other things. And of course, this is York Universe, our wonderful weekly show, broadcasting live from the Allan Carswell Observatory located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. York Universe broadcasts every Monday night at 9 p.m. local Toronto time or Tuesday morning at 2 a.m. UT, if that's more your speed. York Universe works in concert with our online public viewing program run by the Observatory team, which goes between the hours of 9 to 10 p.m. local Toronto time. If you'd like to find more out about the show or listen to previous episodes, you can always go to yorku.ca/science/observatory and follow the links to OPV online public viewing or click on any YouTube link to get into the live show. And of course, just go over to Monday nights to see the archive. If you have any questions or comments on our past shows or suggestions for future topics, you can always email us at observe@yorku.ca. And you can connect with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. It's York Observatory and York U Observatory on Twitter and Instagram, respectively. And of course, over on Facebook, we're Allan Carswell OBS. All of our programs are free, but if you would like to make a donation, you can always see that same website I mentioned before, yorku.ca/science/observatory. We are monitoring the chat room over on YouTube for questions, and our crew is posting content. Fortunately, tonight, I am very happy to report that the current weather is excellent. We are seeing extremely clear skies above the observatory, and we have the telescope pointed towards the Orion Nebula tonight. So that will be appearing very shortly on YouTube. So if you're just tuning in, you haven't missed it yet. It should be up there in about 5 or 6 minutes as the crew finishes maneuvering the telescope into position. So if you'd like to see some lovely clear images, feel free to go ahead and tune in over on that YouTube channel. Robin, how is it where you are?
I'm downtown Toronto. I was just outside actually. I saw Jupiter,
Ah,
but not much else.
so it's more the light pollution than anything else, I gather.
Yes, very much so where I am.
Well, light pollution is an ongoing issue for all of Toronto and even the greater Toronto area. And as folks may remember, we're just going to go ahead and reintroduce Robin very quickly for you. If you missed her on our previous shows, Professor Robin Metcalf is a very famous bloggist, actually, which will become important later. Her
That's very
astronomy.
generous.
I love your astronomer in residence blog. It's beautiful. So if you
Talk
anyone
about trying to make something out of nothing. But I'm glad that it was entertaining.
And if people want to find out more about your astronomer in residence blog, it is actually still on that same website I told everyone about before, but you just have to click on astronomer in residence. So it's yorku.ca/science/observatory/air for astronomer in residence. And her blog is up currently for 2023. We're about to switch into 2024. And being a astronomer in residence last year, she's also a professor at York University in the Division of Natural Science and has been teaching for over 20 years. Her PhD research pertained to extragalactic astronomy, but I have talked to her about all kinds of things and with great success in astronomy. Tonight, we're going to be talking about even more wide-reaching and eclipse-related things. And Robin has been kind enough to join us once again to share her passion for the night sky and the outdoors and the daylight apparently as well. So thank you very much for joining us
Oh,
tonight.
thank you for having me. So fun.
And I mean, without further ado, of course, we're hoping that we do get the live images from the telescope tonight because it
Cool.
is so very clear. But we have all kinds of great stuff stacked up for our show tonight. So usually we do a little bit of This Week in Space and Astronomy history. And since everyone is getting really excited about this upcoming eclipse, I thought, hey, why not? Why not us too? So I'm actually going to start us off this week in space and astronomy history by going to an actual eclipse that did happen on February 26th, 1979. So I looked around, and sure enough, there was a total solar eclipse in North America in 1979. And this is kind of a cool one. So we've got a bit of an eclipse theme for the episode today. And since we're starting off here, for our listeners who might not have heard the other shows, a solar eclipse is an astronomical phenomenon that occurs when the moon literally comes in between the Earth and our sunlight. So during the daytime, the sun shines on the half of the Earth that is facing it. The Earth is, of course, spinning around, but we get some amount of sunshine while that half faces the sun. Now, when the moon gets in the way, what happens is it's literally sort of just walking into our sunlight, and it casts a shadow. So the shadow of the moon on the Earth blocks the light. And this is pretty spectacular. And it's, of course, very, very fun to see, but it only happens in the very, very narrow path across the Earth's surface where the moon can cast its shadow down on the Earth. And this is something that I think a lot of us might have heard of one time or another about eclipses. Well, okay, so you need the shadow to be cast, but you have to actually be standing in the relatively small part of the Earth that the shadow is to be able to see it, because the sun is incredibly bright. It's incredibly luminous from our position on Earth. It's so bright that it lights up the entire half of the planet during the day. So if it's only blocked part way, the sunlight that comes through is still enough that we don't really notice it. So partial eclipses are when that happens. And that's basically the moon partially blocking the sun. And those are really, really hard for humans to notice unless you have special viewing equipment like a pinhole camera or special glasses that we'll probably talk a little bit about later. So that's a solar eclipse. And that's what happened in 1979. And in 1979, it actually did make a total solar eclipse. So that meant that the moon was in just the right position to exactly line up with the sun with respect to Earth. And that meant that it could actually cast a direct shadow. So it had the what's basically called totality, where the sun is completely blocked. And those are spectacular images you might have seen online before, where the sun goes dark. It's a black circle covering the brilliant white, sort of halo around it. And the black circle is, of course, the moon that's blocking the sunlight. And the white around it is the corona and the areas of the sun that we normally can't see because the sun itself is so incredibly bright. So I'll just talk a little bit about this eclipse, and then we'll, of course, go on to more and more eclipses, because today is the eclipse episode. I will just say that as we are doing this, the live viewing has succeeded. And although the moon is not in a position that we can point to with a telescope right now, they are actually showing the Orion Nebula. So the
That is
live,
fabulous. Look at
yes.
that. Amazing.
So it is pretty fun. Now we're going to go ahead and just mention that this eclipse, although basically the shadow of the moon has sort of different regions. Now, as the moon casts a shadow, it's not in exactly the right place to cast a perfect shadow everywhere. So you get different regions of shadow across the surface. This particular eclipse in 1979, which unfortunately I was not existing yet enough to be able to appreciate it. It did actually pass through the Pacific Northwest and up into Canada. So it actually had a pretty good pass through several different regions of Canada, in particular part of Ontario, I think, and a large swath, of course, up north as well. So the eclipse that happened in 1979 is part of eclipses that generally happen every kind of once in a while. And eclipses, I think it's worth mentioning at this point, if the moon takes a month to go around the Earth, which it does, and it's generally in line with the sun, it's all on the same plane of the ecliptic. In theory, you could get eclipses every month. But it's actually not exactly aligned. And this is one of the fun things about astronomy is that there are just enough little offsets and tweaks to where it makes things really interesting. And one of the harder things to predict is actually solar eclipses. So when the moon does cast that very, very small shadow on the Earth, two of the hardest questions you could ask are when is it going to happen, followed by where is it going to happen? Because only a very small region of Earth will actually be able to get that spectacular totality. And this is something that's going to be really important when we get close to our own eclipse here in Ontario this year. So this is a This Week Space and Astronomy History that is very relevant to us right now because what was true in 1979 is also going to be true in 2024, which is that only very certain regions will actually be able to get the effect of totality. So, some places in North America and the Pacific Northwest did get totality. Most did not. Here in Ontario in 2024, once we hit April 8th, Niagara Falls will get totality, but Toronto will not. So, if you want to see the total solar eclipse, be aware they've always been this fiddly. So do you have any favorite eclipse tips for viewing, Robin? I'll make sure I'll just get her back.
Sorry, I'm here. I'm here. Eclipse tips for viewing. I mean, I've never seen a total solar eclipse,
Neither
and
neither have I, so we're the perfect people to be doing this.
yeah. But as you know, I have big plans for this upcoming one. And do you want me to get into that now?
Well, let's go ahead and finish off our history
Or the
section.
history?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we've got a
Lots of good
couple
stories.
interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of good stories for eclipses, and the cool thing about it is, and I think maybe I'll just finish my short little eclipse spiel, which is that even though we are lined up with the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, you don't necessarily get an eclipse every full moon or every new moon. So the full moon will correspond to potential lunar eclipses when the moon moves into Earth's shadow, and the new moon will correspond to your potential chance for a solar eclipse where the moon blocks the sun. But there's some pretty fun ways that you can work through the astronomical data to try to figure out exactly when that alignment will happen because I say there's a little bit of an offset. So something that has been known since really ancient times is something called the Saros cycle, and you might have heard of this before if you are like me, a little bit of an eclipse fan. But the periodicity, or how often, and the reoccurrence of eclipses that happen on Earth is governed by something called the Saros cycle. And this is a period of approximately, and this is a very approximate, 6,585.3 days, which is about 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. Has been known for a very long time, probably even longer than we recognize because of the difficulty in preserving historical records. But it was known to the Chaldeans. It was known to some Mesopotamians. It was known to many different cultures around the world. And probably even before that, but it arises from a natural harmony between 3 of the moon's orbital period. So you have something called the synodic month, which is new moon to new moon. And that's a great way to tell time. So people have used it at the moon as calendar for good reasons. There's something called the and let me get this correct, the anomalistic moon, month, and that's perigee to perigee. So the moon goes around the Earth, but it's not in completely a circle. So it has an apogee and a perigee, or a point of closest approach and farthest away approach. So it's a little bit of an ellipse. It also has something called, and this is a cool one, a draconic month, which is node to node. And the nodes are where you align with the plane of the ecliptic, and that's where you can get eclipses. And so a Saros cycle is when you basically have 223 of the synodic months, which is new moon to new moon, if that makes sense. And so, of course, there's a really cool history of this, and this is something that people can follow and have followed for thousands of years now. And people were able to chart out the Saros cycle and say, oh, it's actually due. There must be an eclipse going to happen. However, where it's going to happen on Earth is not answered by the Saros cycle. For that, you need some pretty advanced modeling of the Sun, Earth, Moon system, and you need an accurate model of the Sun, Earth, Moon system with something like accurate distances and sizes. So exactly where, especially solar eclipses, will occur has been something that only recently we've been able to accurately pin down. And now we have great models.
Yeah, and that one element of uncertainty is really interesting because the Maya, of course, were also able to, they understood that eclipses happen at intervals of either 5 or 6 months because that's when the three objects are coplanar. But because there's that element of uncertainty about where you can see them, that whenever we got to that 5 or 6 month period where an eclipse was expected but wasn't seen, then the Maya believed that they had prevented it with, their ceremonies and such.
Yeah, and it is interesting because it's having the Saros cycle so long, so long known in human history, but not knowing where it's going to land really adds some spice to a lot of the a lot of the historical records. And of course, it goes back, as I say, many thousands of years, and probably even before that, because we have to rely on what written records we can find. We do know that it's was in Babylonian times around was it 2.5 millennia ago or so, and they already had charted with some astronomer the eclipse cycles, and they actually had 6,585 days long for their eclipse cycles, which is really cool because and of course, given that you didn't always see them, because you weren't in the right location, and you do have to be directly under a pretty small area to actually see them. You have to wonder how many of these were missed, and how many of them have actually been recorded accurately. And it's great because now we have the models to accurately run backwards in time and see where eclipses were. And this allows us to actually date some things that maybe would not have been possible to date before, because the eclipses are so limited in the region that they occupy. And so that's why I actually made, and this is going to get us to our next item, which is not strictly this week in space and astronomy history, but some interesting eclipses that have happened over the years. And it's worth noting that the eclipses that have been recorded are not all the eclipses that happened. And some eclipses have actually been used to date historical events because eclipses are notable if you're standing under them. And so some very ancient events have been dated by eclipses. And in particular, I believe the current oldest is something like to 2137 BCE, which is about 2,136 years ago, I think. Unless I'm getting my dates wrong. Um, so before Common Era, as we go backwards, we can just add that date directly to the time that we have now. So if you go to BCE, 430 or 431, I think it's 430. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Robin.
Oh yeah, that sounds good. No, you're right about the math. I'm just it's been too long a day for me to do it in my head. But
Yeah,
you
and
are
as you go back to zero from, because so assuming that we're at
yes, you add the
2024
two.
now, you have to go back to zero and then you go negative the other way
Right.
when you get to the
So the
date
sum
line.
of the BCE plus the AD gives you how many years ago this thing occurred.
Uh, Before Common Era, yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
Okay.
it's tricky because they're actually called different things as well. And so, when you run into dates, you always have to ask, wait a minute, how many years ago is that?
And
But
sorry, Elena, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just seeing in the chat what's going on with the dome.
oh, yeah, that's all right. It's every once in a while we do get an automatic close.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Because
so
I had
it's
asked if they could see Sirius because it's low in the sky right now, and so it's if you can see it from there, it's probably scintillating really noticeably, and that really cool flashing.
oh
Um,
yeah,
so
yeah,
it would be great if we could look at it through the telescope.
oh yeah, it's really really easy to see. Obviously,
Okay, okay.
it is seriously easy to see. We do occasionally get weather safety automatic closures, which is actually a
Oh,
cool
okay,
feature of the
okay,
new Allan Carswell Observatory. But sometimes they happen even though there's not actually bad weather, which is
okay.
annoying. So we actually have as part of our new automated system, and this is relevant for anyone who's looking to request time or programmed time. We do actually have the ability to program in observing, and of course let it run off of the Voyager scripts. And assuming that it does not accidentally trigger a close on you, it will actually run the observing and then close down itself at the end of the night.
Ah,
But
okay,
you do take a risk with any automated program is that if you hook it up into a safety system, the safety system might be triggered by other things. And so our best guess is like maybe there's like, I don't know, some bird or something that flies by at some point and it's like, oh no, a cloud. And then so most of the time it doesn't happen, but you do occasionally get automatic closures on a an automatic system.
okay.
But we will be able to go back to live viewing over there on OPV, so our viewers can tune into that as soon as they are able to reopen and set it back up.
Very cool. Okay, sorry, I took you off course.
No, we're just covering eclipses. So on the list of things you cannot do with a 1 meter telescope, one of those is go to the sun, because you would need a extremely strong filter to block light to prevent it from just absolutely destroying your telescope. But using your eyeballs and eclipses, you can view the sun with a pinhole camera, which honestly absolutely anyone could do. And this is technology that they would have had even thousands of years ago. Which brings me back to so far, I did have a look. The farthest to go recorded eclipse that I could find was a annular eclipse that has been dated 2,136 years ago, which is from something called the drunk astronomer's poem, and it's author unknown. The story may be apocryphal,
Hmm.
and it says, "Here lie the bodies of Ho and Hai, whose fate the sad was visible, being hanged because they could not spy the eclipse which was invisible.
Hmm.
So, this has actually been dated based on its location to thousands of years ago. And eclipses have since then been used as dating aids,
Hmm.
not for not for going on dates, but for actually dating historical events with a unique combination of location and event. The Ugarit eclipse, which was this is a pretty fun one. This one was based off of a tablet that was discovered and actually recently redone. So I've actually noted it as something that which has been um, uh, redated in recent era. The tablet was an astronomical clay of tablet was found in 1948 in the ancient city of Ugarit, which I might be pronouncing a little wrong, in what is now Syria. And it was identified in the 1980s as a description of a total solar eclipse that occurred on 3 of May, 1375 BC. And the dating of the ancient solar eclipse actually provides reference points to the long-term evolution of the angular momentum in the Earth-Moon system because of the modeling they can do. And there's a wonderful paper on this actually that was published in Nature in 1989 about the dating of this tablet. And they reanalyzed the Ugarit eclipse record and provided a new dating on the tablet because in the text they mentioned the visibility of the planet Mars as well as the eclipse. So they saw the planet Mars during the eclipse, and
Hmm.
that actually allowed them to be more precise and say actually it was not on 3 May 1375.
Hmm.
It was actually 5 March 1223. And this actually allowed them to go ahead and make predictions showing that the Earth's rotation had changed very little during the past 3,000 years, which is really cool. And so
Hmm.
this one eclipse record, and again, just by the variation of the dating, you can see that probably there are some rather large error bars on this of a couple hundred years, but it still gives you a lot more information than you would have had otherwise. And especially some of these very very ancient cities, especially this Ugarit in Syria, dating otherwise would have been a real challenge. So you have really cool ancient eclipse records. We have, of course, the Ugarit eclipse, which I just mentioned, and that's 1375 BCE. So before Common Era. So that's 2024 plus 1375 years ago, minus one.
Hmm.
And that's an extraordinary measurement. And of course, there are others pretty famous of varying degrees in 1302, just to try to go a little bit in order. The Chinese historians documented a total eclipse that blocked out the sun for 6 minutes in 763 BC. So that's before Common Era again. So that would be 2024 plus 763 minus 1 years ago. So that would be that's the Assyrian Empire, which was in the location that is now Iraq. And this particular Assyrian eclipse had a documented time length of 5 minutes, and the Assyrian eclipse is also known as the Bur Sagal eclipse, and it was recorded in Assyrian eponym lists, which was a dating system for the calendar in ancient Assyria. And there's really cool stuff here. You can, of course, tie in how calendars are developed. In this particular system, every year was associated with the name or eponym of the limu, or the official who led that year's New Year's festival, which is kind of a cool and awesome way to do calendars.
Hmm.
And it actually shows, all kinds of cool historical things. And this is way, way, way before, Gregorian calendars were used or anything like that. And so you have these really cool historical documents. Of course, there's also, other documents, like even the Quran mentions eclipses. And throughout history, we've had, several different really, really fun ones, leading all the way up to, I think, the last one that I had on my list, which was the Einstein eclipse. But let's do actually one from Thales as well, because you have one from Thales in 585, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the ancient Greek philosopher Thales, and it's thought of as the birth of science, this eclipse, because Thales, prior to that eclipse, the ancient Greek philosophers tended to attribute eclipses to, random acts of the gods. And Thales had traveled quite a bit, and he had learned from the Babylonian astronomers and the ancient Egyptian astronomers, who by that point had figured out the patterns of the eclipse cycle. And so Thales comes home, and he predicts this eclipse to the day in 585 BC. And as it happened, there was a long-standing battle that was going on, and this total solar eclipse happened, and the sky darkened, and it was such a dramatic event that both armies laid down their arms and had their moment that this is an omen that we should stop our fighting. And because it was the first time ever that an eclipse had been predicted in that part of the world. So as you were saying before, Elena, that the date of that eclipse was used to date this historical battle.
Amazing. And of course, I think I've heard of that one actually. Um, that's really, really cool.
Yeah, so all sorts of great stories attributed to eclipses. Oh, I see. It looks like the dome is going to open again, and they're going to try to see Sirius, which is very cool. But when I was in Killarney and I had like a one night basically in the dome, that was one of the things that I did, and to see the flashing colors through the telescope, and it was really spectacular. So
Oh
hopefully we
yeah,
can
yeah.
we can see that live here,
Oh, and all you
especially
have
if
to do
you if
is
you throw the star out of focus
yep,
so that
yep,
it looks like this
exactly.
big, rainbow disc. It's very cool.
Yeah, a little bit on Malin Cam, which is our eyepiece cam, and that's what they're using tonight. Just one of the things you can do is actually change the color balance and the
Ah,
contrast. So
nice.
it's a little better than just an eyepiece. So definitely worth tuning into if you do happen to be listening live and somehow aren't watching, please do stay tuned. But yes, the online public viewing always runs in concert with the observing, and I think actually that's a really good point for me to just remind everybody. It is about halfway through the broadcast, and you are listening to York Universe, broadcasting live from the Allan Carswell Observatory, which is currently experiencing extremely clear skies and working on reopening at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. You can find out more about this show and all of our other content on our website at yorku.ca/science/observatory. And of course, you can join us for chat, questions, or content on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And tonight, you're listening to Robin Metcalf and myself, Dr. Elena Hyde. And we are currently discussing all things eclipses and a bit of eclipse history. So I was just thinking the last two I definitely want to make sure I go through with a little bit more recent eclipses, and on our way to more recent times, going out of the before Common Era dates to Common Era, or things that have happened in the last 2024 years. In about the year of 1142, in August 22nd. there was actually a very famous eclipse here in North America, just right next to Lake Ontario, actually. And this was the eclipse that marked the start of the Iroquois Confederacy. And this is a wonderful eclipse. So this is something that has been of interest to a lot of historians. Dating the Iroquois Confederacy was something that they had been working on. When did the oldest living democracy in North America actually get started? So this was the Haudenosaunee, also in parentheses Iroquois Confederacy. And the modern sort of American democracy, whatever you think of it, has been actually said to be modeled on the democratic ideals of the Iroquois Confederacy, which did start substantially sooner. So when did it start exactly? And what was it? So this was originally consisted of 5 different nations: the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca. And the sixth nation, or what's called was called Tuscarora, joined in the early 18th century. So that was the last, I think, the last members. That was around 1701, 1800. So the New York and sort of Ontario-ish tribes before European arrival actually came together and started this confederacy. And it just so happens that during the event, there was an eclipse, and sure enough, if you actually go to eclipse maps, you can. So this is one of the fun things everyone can do now. Go over to the NASA eclipse website and find out when the last total solar eclipse was in your area. And I'm very sorry for people who are near the equator, because it might not, or the poles. There are certain places that do not get hit easily by the moon's shadow. But you can actually find out locations on Earth when eclipses happened there. And if you look up the August 1142 total solar eclipse, you can actually find the eclipse path and what areas it went through, and the actual location of the sort of event that um, sort of was I suppose, a great peacemaking moment for the region, and the eclipses were, a pretty major event. So I don't know if it was timed to be with the eclipse, or it was a lucky coincidence, but the eclipse path going very, very close means that we can actually accurately date it to the modern calendar, because we know exactly when and where the eclipse happened. So the research currently suggests that a total solar eclipse of August 22nd, 1142, so a good long while ago, actually coincided with the birth of the Iroquois, or Five Nations Confederacy. And it would have been in the location of the modern day city of Victor in New York in the US, which is pretty fun. So it's another example of, I suppose, eclipse detective work from our own area, and involving a little bit of local history. And going forward in time, of course, we also had another pretty famous one that I just couldn't avoid mentioning, which of course is, by all accounts, everything we've mentioned here, very, very, very recent, in 1919. So, um, basically yesterday on this time scale.
Astronomically speaking.
Yeah. There was an eclipse where the sun vanished for 6 minutes and 51 seconds, and scientists all over ran out to measure the bending of lights from stars as predicted by Einstein's theory of general relativity. And of course, this test, like many other tests that have happened since, succeeded fabulously. So everything that we've ever tested from Einstein has always come out roses. So if you ever want to run a really successful physics experiment, just test Einstein's laws.
Mm.
So eclipses have been used for historical purposes, for dating purposes. They have been predicted and analyzed for years and years. And of course, the most sort of enigmatic of all eclipses is the total solar eclipse, because this is the one that you don't know where it's happening until very recently. So, so that's what we're looking forward to, of course, later on this year in April, when we get up to April 8th, and of course have the eclipse path going through part of Ontario.
They're
All
doing
right.
a great job with those pictures of Sirius.
Oh, yes. Over on the live views, they have successfully sort of defocused the telescope a little bit. So you can see that
Look at all
on the
those colors.
online public viewing happening now live at live from the Allan Carswell Observatory,
And
1 meter telescope.
it's so amazing to see this like live through the telescope itself, just because the scintillating is so fast and it just looks like a strobe light, and it's pretty cool.
Yes, and if anyone from the broadcast is wondering where this is, just head on over to the YouTube channel and look for OPV online public viewing with today's date, February 26th, and all of the views will be on there. Alrighty, so let's go forward a little bit in time. So as a reminder, for anyone listening, we are still doing live public tours at the Allan Carswell Observatory. So if you would like to see some of these fabulous views for yourself with your own eyeballs in person, every Wednesday we are still doing in-person tours. And if it is clear, so not cloudy, then we will open the telescope and you will get to see all of the fancy views that the 1 meter telescope can bring you. And they always start after sunset, and all of the tickets are free online on our website.
Very
So
cool. I will be there next week, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
yes, absolutely. It's always a good time. So you just have to
Hmm.
cross your fingers and toes for clear skies.
And even if it isn't clear, you what do? You take us show us the equipment.
Yes, yes. So the tours always run, and that's actually a good point. If it is an observatory tour, they will run no matter what. If it's an atrium tour, those are weather dependent and we have to
Hmm.
cancel. So if it's an observatory tour, we will run the tour even if it's cloudy, and you'll get to see the telescopes and you'll get to see stock photos and you'll get to walk around and see all the stuff and the photo booths and the instruments and all that cool stuff. You can play the astronomy treasure hunt.
Oh,
uh,
fun. I
yeah,
love treasure
if you find
hunts.
all six, you get a prize.
Nice.
So even if it's cloudy, it's still great if it's an observatory tour. And at this time of year, we do tend to run mostly observatory tours because it does get a bit cold out on top of the Arboretum parking garage roof. But that said, with the unseasonably warm weather, we might start doing more tours over there soon. So
Hmm.
make sure you pay attention when you click the tickets. And I will just go ahead and say that for upcoming eclipse events, if you are interested in solar observing, the Allan A. Carswell Observatory does have not one, not two, but three large public events coming up leading up to the April 8th eclipse. We're doing solar viewing and eclipse education with some solar glasses and telescopes and pinhole cameras. And we're going to Downsview Park in Toronto on March 9th. And we're going to be on top of that same Arboretum parking garage roof on March 23rd. And we're running a special first clear day event for daytime solar viewing on April 2nd through the 7th. And that's all on our website. So you don't have to remember it all, but those are all upcoming solar viewing and eclipse events. And so we'll have eclipse information, which is also on our website, as well as pinhole cameras you can play with. And if we can get the sidewalk chalk, we'll even be doing a model of the solar system.
Oh, cool.
So very, very fun. If anyone wants to join us for any of those events or all of those events, just keep in mind that the March 9th and 23rd one, if it is cloudy, obviously we can't do the observing part. So that's why we're also doing a first clear day event, just to make sure that we get some proper sun viewing in somehow. We can watch some sunspots go around, look for solar flares, and show people how to safely view the sun. Um, so I hear that you're planning some pretty fun eclipse stuff too, Robin.
I am very, very excited about this. So I'm a member of the Royal Astronomical Society Mississauga branch. I think, Elena, you're a member of the Toronto branch.
Yes, but we love each other. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
We're
Yeah, there's
friends.
no rivalry there. Um, and so there is a group of us, eclipse chasers. I think we're sort of 10 plus or minus two on any given day. The group fluctuates. And so we're going to be a convoy of cars driving south. And the way it is organized right now is that we have 5 motels booked between, I believe, Indiana and Texas. And so first night, which I think is April 5th, we stop at the nearest one, and then, we check the weather. So all the motels are on along the path of totality. And then we check the weather and see, what's it looking like on April 8th is where we are going to be okay. If it is, let's cancel all the other reservations, or we might keep going further south down to Texas. Although apparently a lot of the small towns in Texas along the path of totality have declared an emergency, state of emergency.
Oh my
So,
gosh,
because
really?
they're afraid to be overwhelmed by, eclipse chasers. But that's the plan. It's going to be an awesome, very, very fluid road trip. And I'm planning to blog the whole thing. And thank you, Elena, for offering to post it on your Eclipse site.
Yes,
So there's
and
going to be a
we'll plug
lot.
that.
Yeah, that would be great. There's going to be
Um,
lots of photos of our crazy activities and adventures. Apparently, it's tornado season when and where we're going.
well, I hope to see
So
pictures of eclipses and not tornadoes.
yeah, me too.
Um,
It should be really interesting. There's one of the women in the group. She's done this before. I've never. And so she was telling us some stories, and she said, like, on the day of it becomes crazy, like highways are completely jam-packed. Everything just kind of stops. And you might find that you're in the middle of a football field with thousands of people, right? And so we were joking about how, like, if that's where we end up, like in the middle of nowhere with thousands of people, then, we want to make sure we've got some supplies with us because we might be there for hours. And so someone suggested that we bring a camping toilet, which I happen to have. Uh, and not only do I have a camping toilet, but I have a camping toilet shelter. So it's a tent that's designed to
oh
fit over the
wow.
camping toilet so that you actually have privacy. And it could be that we are in the middle of a football field with thousands of people, and I am the only person with a camping toilet and a privacy shelter, in which case we could make a fortune.
Well, that
So
is, one possible way to reimburse some travel expenses, I suppose.
yeah, although I was
And
just telling this story to someone who said, yeah, but Robin, people don't carry cash around anymore. So you're going to have some kind of like payment machine,
oh my gosh,
which is just going to complicate everything. But
yeah,
anyway, stay tuned for the blog because all of this will be up there.
absolutely. And this will all, and just in case anyone's wondering, I did already give the website twice, but it's the same website that you've heard throughout this show, yorq.ca/science/observatory. And all you have to do is go over to the Solar Eclipse 2024 April 8th button /area. And it says Solar Eclipse very big right on the top. So you just click on that, and the blog will be up on the side where everyone can read it,
Cool.
in a little while.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I've been told that uh, compared to the possibility of, a sunny day where we can see it around here, which is like Niagara, Stony Creek, I think Burlington, that it's going south, there's only like a 10% increase in the likelihood of actually being able to see the sun. So it's possible that, we're going to all this stuff, we're going to drive all the way down there and still not see the eclipse. But I love road trips. I don't care. And anyway, even through the clouds, you still experience the darkening of the sky and that kind of, this is what I've been told anyway, that surreal moment. So, I'm sure, just like with my Killarney experience, I'm sure that there will be stories to tell out of this.
Oh
Eclipse or
yeah.
no eclipse.
Well, I think the eclipse will happen no matter what. It's just a question of how good of a view are any of us
Exactly,
going to
exactly.
get.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
and so of the people that I'm going with, there a lot of them are bringing some pretty fancy equipment. For me, it's more about documenting just the experience, uh, taking pictures and video of the people, and their reaction to it. I'm hoping we're going to be somewhere in farm country, and I've heard that there's like a noticeable effect on the animals. So that would be a pretty cool thing to be able to experience and capture as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that is as we probably don't have time to talk about in this episode, but the effect of darkness or light when animals are not expecting it is extraordinary.
Hmm.
And the importance of darkness and dark skies is something I think that's near and dear to both of our hearts, but it's something you can really, really see if you are in totality. The sun goes dark and it actually
You
does
can
become,
sometimes see stars
you can see
in the
stars,
middle of the day.
and if Mars is out, you can see that.
Hmm.
If Jupiter is out, you can see that. It's and of course the animals all start reacting to it. And so you'll see things like strange behavior from birds, which is something because, very noticeable because they start, sort of flying overhead. And all kinds of interesting things. So it's a great a great experience, even if you're maybe not in the best skies. You will definitely notice something if you're in totality.
Hmm.
But if it's clear, then obviously you get the best effect because then you'll actually be able to see some of the features on the sun that you can only see during totality.
Yes.
So I think maybe we've got a few minutes left. Maybe we talk a little bit about some of the equipment and viewing tips.
Yeah. You can photograph a solar eclipse with a phone camera. You can do a pretty good job. This particular eclipse is going to be high in the sky, and right, because it's like depending on where you are, like I think three-ish
Yep.
around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, from where we are now. So yeah, high in the sky, and that with they're more spectacular when they're lower. They look bigger. Like the sun looks bigger, and of course you can get some interesting foreground landscape in there. So yeah, if you do plan on filming it with a phone, you want to have like a wide field. You probably want to have your phone in portrait mode rather than landscape so that you can get hopefully a little bit of landscape in addition to the high sun. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say make sure that you also have a filter on if it's not
Oh God,
during
yeah.
during
That's very
totality,
important.
because just like your eyes can be damaged, so can your phone be damaged and your phone's camera. Because the sun is, and it's worth saying many, many times, incredibly bright, and it's not just the intensity of light, but also there are a variety of white light wavelengths that do not interact in a good way with your eye, and in particular the materials in your eye.
Hmm.
So you could, potentially be exposing your eye and your eye structure to uh, things that could damage or, permanently affect the crystallization of the lens in your eye, or the fluids in your eye, or even just the light sensing cones at the back. And people have been known to go blind from this kind of thing. So do not force yourself to look at the sun. Your natural inclination is to not look directly at the sun. So
Right.
go with
Get
yeah,
yourself a pair of
yeah,
solar glasses. And the Royal Astronomical Society, if you go to their website, you can buy them in
yes.
packs. You guys, I imagine the observatory is going to get
Yeah,
a
we
pack of
have
them.
some. There are honestly there are places all over Ontario. I just
Yeah.
heard from a student of mine that said I think they found some at Canadian Tire that were from
Oh,
NASA.
wow, that's amazing.
So
Yeah, and they're
I've seen
cheap.
them for sale all over. And you know, Space Place Canada, RCI Science,
Yeah, but get them now because I
Rask
remember at the
National.
last solar eclipse that there was a shortage. So get them now. And another really nice way to enjoy the eclipse is through a pair of binoculars with, like solar filtered binoculars. And you can pick up a, reasonable pair for 40, $50. And not only can you see eclipses through them, but you can also see sunspots.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and then you set it up on a tripod and you can just look through it, and it's a nice way to enjoy the experience as well.
Yeah, and if you do get the glasses, a good thing to do before you put them on and try to look at the sun is just look at them away from the sun with some light shining on them so that you can just see that they don't have any holes in them.
Oh, what a great idea.
Because if you're basically the solar rated glasses, they have to be safety rated. They have to be properly tested to block enough light that you're not going to hurt your eyes. And there are special glasses on the NASA website that are listed, and also there's places like Rask, which will provide the safe kind.
Hmm.
Welders goggles are not safety glasses for viewing the sun. Sunglasses do not do it. So don't use those. Use really truly protective glasses, or if you really don't have any, you can always make yourself a pinhole camera. It's the
Hmm.
oldest and easiest projection method in human history. um, has also been used for thousands of years. Get a flat thing and make a small hole in it and shine the sun through, and
Hmm.
you will be able to project the sun's surface onto any other surface. So
Yeah,
you can
shoebox
actually,
works really well too.
yeah, a shoebox works. A kitchen pasta strainer will work. A
Ah,
large piece of cardboard will work.
you,
A
you know what,
piece of
Elena, because
aluminum foil. It's so good.
we've only got like a minute left, but I just wanted to mention, the effect of how you can see a solar eclipse like on leaves.
Yep. You can see it
Do you
on
want
leaves
to
as
say a
well.
bit about that? It's kind of cool.
It's a version of the pinhole camera,
Right.
basically.
But
But yeah,
natural.
yes, and we have a list of those viewing tips that will be up on our website, and Rask also has one, as does the Eclipse Committee of Ontario. So
Hmm.
make sure to check out safe solar viewing techniques, and do not look directly at the sun, please. That's so that's my message for tonight.
That's the take home message.
That's the take home message. And we do have to wrap it up here for this evening. So we'll just go ahead and wander on over. Do you have any last thoughts for tonight, Robin?
No, but thanks so much. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. You have been listening to York Universe, the astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. The hosts this evening have been Professor Robin Metcalf and myself, Dr. Alina Hyde. You can always connect with us on Twitter with the handle at York Universe, Instagram, York U Observatory, and Facebook at Allan Carswell Obs, as well as check out our website for all that stuff we've been talking about tonight, including the blog and the astronomer in residence and all that good stuff. yorku.ca/science/observatory. Thanks for tuning in. Clear skies and have a good night.